Hello, I'm John Featherston, the CEO of RISMedia, and it's my pleasure to welcome all of you joining us today. After recording record years during the COVID crisis, this year our industry has faced a myriad of new challenges, and in many cases, these challenges have adversely affected our financial performances. However, our industry is resilient, always rising to meet the challenges we face and consistently moving us forward and helping our neighbors find the appropriate housing solutions. All of you joining us today, you're interested in examining new opportunities to grow your company through mergers and acquisitions to profitably expand your organization. Or perhaps you're looking at today's webinar as a brokerage owner confidentially seeking information on the potential worth of your company as you contemplate a potential exit. Whatever your reasons, today we're going to be examining the state of M&As in our industry, which has changed dramatically over the last year or so. If you're exploring expanding your business through acquisitions, the experts on today's webinar can be great resources for you, and they are incredible professionals. Before we begin, I'd like to point out to all of you, today's special webinar provides all of you a taste of just one of the many topics of interest that we'll be discussing in detail at the 35th annual RISMedia CEO and Leadership Exchange, September 5 to 7 in Washington, D.C. This is our flagship event for RISMedia. In September, hundreds of brokerage owners and other leading decision makers share and discuss topics of great concern to all brokerage leaders. And by the way, every one of the moderators and panelists joining us today on this session will be there in September. After today's session, I'll be sending you a special invite to the September CEO Exchange, and I look forward to having you join us there. It's a great opportunity to invest in your future. There's no better time than the present to examine how to profitably expand your business. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to one of our industry's most accomplished mergers and acquisitions experts, a professional who has helped hundreds of residential brokerage firms and brands grow and protect their companies through mergers and acquisitions and roll-ups, my good friend, George Schlusser. George, welcome.
Thank you, John. It's always a pleasure to discuss my favorite topic, M&A, and we have an amazing panel to help us today do that. So let's get started. The title of today's webinar is Why the Time is Now. But is it really a good time to buy or even sell a real estate company? That's a question we hope to answer for you today. So I don't have the crystal ball, but I believe there's still a significant headwind facing the real estate industry. In a declining market, sometimes the only way to grow is through M&A. Of the top brokerages in the US, most, I would say all, achieve their significant ranking due to growth through M&A in both good and not so good times. After the frenzy of the last dozen years, real estate M&A activity has definitely slowed. The slowdown has been a direct result of buyers' concern for the declining market. At the same time, most of the stock exchange-owned companies shut down making any new acquisitions. The result is there's far fewer buyers pursuing a transaction. That's good news for the buyers that are left, and hopefully for those of you on this call. An M&A strategy can yield growth while also increasing margins and profitability. Two firms that have limited, zero, or even negative profitability can join together, eliminate duplicate expenses, thereby creating one profitable firm. It's a proven and successful model in every industry. The challenge for buyers in the current market is to help a seller understand and maybe admit their company's worth less now than it was a year or two ago. Not selling earlier may have actually been a good decision and result in an overall financial benefit to the seller. Why? They enjoyed many profitable years. They banked profits they wouldn't have achieved if they'd sold earlier. In fact, even if the purchase price is less than they were offered previously, they may have maximized their total investment by waiting and selling the firm now. Now may also be the best selling window for the next few years. So with buyers and sellers being cautious, there'll have to be compromise on both sides, but that has always been the case. This year, compromise will come in the form of more flexible terms. This will allow the seller to maximize their firm's value, but it also will help minimize the risk for the buyer. What this means, there'll be less cash up front paid this year and longer earnouts. The earnouts we're currently seeing are based on the actual future performance of the acquired firm. This creates fairness to both sides. Through my years in M&A, I found that the money or the financial side is only one part. And it's also where most everyone focuses first, especially. There's a pattern of common components that exist in virtually every successful transaction I've been involved in. And by success, I mean where at least 95% plus of the GCI stays and the agents are productive and happy for many years to come. That's a successful transaction. But I believe these components are as important to success as the purchase price is. So I wanted to quickly share them with you. The cultural compatibility of the two firms is critical and may be the single most important contributor to success. A similar business model makes the acquired company so much easier to assimilate and integrate. Financially, both sides need to understand that creating a fair opportunity is required for all. Both sides must win. And for a motivation to conclude a transaction, there must be a need that is discovered, acknowledged, and then satisfied. Also of significant importance, the creation of mutual trust and respect of the principles. Probably obvious, but that is a critical component as well. So we strive to accomplish all 5 of these components with our clients. I recommend the same to all of you for a successful transaction. Because there's going to be plenty of M&A opportunities this year. During every past downturn, there's always been a healthy level of M&A activity. The fundamental principles of consolidation continue to make sound business sense. Some brokerages experience a decline in this market in transaction count, and M&A is going to be required for both buyers and sellers to remain financially healthy. If you're considering an M&A strategy, this webinar is designed to help, but continue to seek advice from peers or pros who have grown through multiple M&As. Please attend, as John said, the CEO Exchange in September. All of our panelists are going to be there participating, and we'll have much more in-depth M&A sessions. On the education side, my colleague Victor London and I have just published the book, Acquiring More Profit. It offers guidance on the entire process from prospecting to closing. We created an implementation system as a companion piece that's complete with customizable tools and forms you'll need to complete a successful acquisition. And you can find out more about these books and our M&A advisory services at wavegroup.com//AMP. Now we're going to get to our illustrious panel. And first up is going to be Bess Friedman. Let me just exit from the screen so you can see everyone's face. Bess is a former attorney who was named CEO of Brown Harris Stevens in 2018. Under her leadership, Brown Harris Stevens has grown into one of the largest and most successful privately held real estate firms in the U.S. Now with over 50 offices and more than 2,300 agents across New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, and Florida. Welcome, Bess.
Welcome. Thanks so much, George. I feel like the Brady Bunch with this like square.
Looks a little like that. So just tell us a little bit more about your company and your experiences, especially growing with M&A, please.
Sure. Thanks so much for that intro, George, and always nice to see John and be here with everybody. Yeah, so you mentioned Brown Harris Stevens, we celebrated our 150th year in business this year. We're one of the few privately held large real estate companies left. And I really love that about our company. We're unique in that way. And you mentioned our locations, we're in 4 states. We have about 3,000 agents. But for us, our biggest merger happened during the pandemic because many of you are familiar with Halstead. And during the pandemic, we merged the 2 companies. And 2 things that you said really struck a chord with me is cultural compatibility and mutual trust. And for us, we were able to merge Brown Harris Stevens and Halstead together because you know, culturally we were compatible in so many ways, and there was trust. And we were able to do that, but it's a huge undertaking anytime that you're merging to, you know, bringing companies in. We kept the Brown Harris Stevens name because we've been around for 150 years. It's luxury. It's got this huge following. I was with somebody last night who mentioned to me that they grew up in one of our buildings, and it has this prestige to it. So we kept the name, but we merged Halstead in. But it's enormous work, and it's very hard. And you have to get all of the agents' trust and make them feel comfortable, like they're going to be able to be successful in your environment. And you mentioned margins. That has changed dramatically over the last decade. You know, companies, brokerages are making less and less money because the margins have been eradicated. You know, things have changed so much because of new firms coming in offering so much. So when you're thinking about merging or growing your company, you have to see how it makes sense. And for us, Halstead was just a no-brainer. We had the same owners. We could, you know, get rid of some of our office space and bring people together. Marketing would be one. There were so many ways we were able to save money and become even more profitable, which we were able to do. But we're still doing some of the merging of the technology behind the scenes, and it takes a lot of effort, but it's great once you do it. We're in a really good place right now, George.
Excellent. Thank you. And I didn't say this before. We're just going to go through each of the panelists and ask them one question, and then we're going to come back and open it up for the deeper questions and the deeper dive. So Beth, that was outstanding. And again, thank you for being part of the panel.
My pleasure.
So next up is my good friend, Larry Rideout. He's chairman and co-owner of Gibson Sotheby's International Realty. And under his leadership, they've evolved through acquisitions and strong organic growth into the leading independently owned firm in Massachusetts. And today he has 25 offices and over 450 associates. Larry, thank you for joining us today. Larry, I hope you can hear me.
I think he's muted.
Larry, we can't hear you.
Okay, Georgia. Sorry, I kind of missed the end.
No problem. So Larry, give us a little bit more background on your company and what role M&A played in your growth, please.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
All right. You got me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I missed the end of what you said, but I kind of know what you're asking me, so I'll just go right ahead. As George mentioned, we acquired this company in 2006. It was a small independent in the south end of Boston, 2 offices actually, 54 agents. And one of the things that when the market changed in 08 so drastically, we knew in order to grow, we had to continue to be aggressive. And so we went on an aggressive merger acquisition kick until about 2011. And then recently when the market turned again, we kind of did it again. So I was looking at it, we've done about 17 merger acquisitions. We started out at, again, 2 offices, 245 million. Last year, we were 3.6 million with 475 agents. So we've had yes, sorry, billion, exactly. And we just are continuing to grow. We see this market as an opportunity. I am only in Massachusetts, so I'm a little bit different than all the rest, but I think we all have the same idea in terms of growth and how to continue to make our company stronger.
Excellent, Larry. Thank you. And we look forward to hearing more of how you grew so quickly. Next up, we have Hobie Hannah. Hobie's a 3rd generation member of the Hannah real estate family, and he's served in a variety of roles since joining the firm in 1994. He's especially been instrumental in the company's recent growth, currently serving as CEO of the nation's largest family-owned real estate company, now with over 500 offices in 13 states. Welcome, Hobie.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to be here. George, thanks for that nice introduction. And John, thanks for putting this all together. And good being with this panel. So you want me to give you a little same thing, background on how
and overall how M&A has changed your company?
Yeah, so our company, which is a family-owned business, started in 1957 by my grandparents, was started in Pittsburgh. And in the 90s, as I'd come into the business, next generation of family members, we started to look and say, as a family, what would that strategy be for growth beyond just Pittsburgh? And knowing that there's a lot of us, Hannah's that's a big Irish Catholic thing. So, there's a lot of us. So we said, how do we grow and make sure that the family business could grow? And we really looked at M&A as that initial thrust, really looking in and around Pittsburgh and copying as we grew in Pittsburgh in the 70s and 80s, it was in this sort of concentric circle model of going from one suburb to another. And the plan then was to do the same thing. So some of our initial acquisitions were to go into really hotbed markets that people on this listening to this webinar be excited to know about, like Newcastle, Pennsylvania, and Youngstown, Ohio, and Morgantown, West Virginia. But you think geographically from Pittsburgh, it grew that way. And it really taught us a lot about, as Beth sort of said, I'd echo that trust level. George, as you'd said at the beginning, having mutual respect. A lot of the brokerage firms that we acquired were ones that we knew or had sent referrals to, or then those next markets. And it really taught us in those days, some of the right moves to make on integration and some of the deadly ones. But they were smaller, so maybe they didn't kill us. And then in early 2000s, we had the opportunity to grow into Cleveland, Ohio, with the acquisition of a 100-year-old company, Smythe Kramer Realtors, which Cleveland and Pittsburgh are 2 hours away. Smythe Kramer was actually larger than Howard Hannah. I think at the time they were 33rd in the country in size, and we might have been 35th. I moved to Cleveland at that time to be part of that team, and we integrated that, and then also bought 2-3 years later our largest competitor, which was Realty One in Cleveland, and consolidated the Cleveland marketplace to have now today about a 30% market share, and have maintained that. And that gave us the confidence. That acquisition was actually done in November of 2009, or 2008, I'm sorry, just as the world was going to sort of hell in a handbasket. And but I always say, if we didn't do that integration and that acquisition, that really sprung us to great growth in that time of challenge and that time of and we, everything we did in that sense, and it gave us a confidence. So from there, we changed the strategy as a family and said, could we grow through M&A into different markets, again, staying in a footprint that's more or less Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, and with other like-minded brokerage firms and bringing them together. And so we've done a mix of what we would call tuck-ins, mixed that what we would call beachfront acquisitions, taking us into new markets, and eventually looking at the landscape. What we do a little bit differently is we will do the traditional acquisition with earnout, cash. You want 100% off the table, but we've also moved to a model where we've gone to what we call a partnership model. And so we've merged with companies like the Allen Tate Company, where we own the majority partnership, but they are still an owner, the Tate family, and some management. Same thing with the FC Tucker Company in Indianapolis. Same with the Rand family and the Rand Company, which we operate as Howard Hannah Rand. And most recently with the Finn and LaCosta families at Coach Realty in Long Island. So our model's unique, that we'll do the 100% acquisition, but we've also found on a sizable deal, maybe a $5 million EBITDA or more, we've found that bringing leadership in that's respected and liked, and having them as an owner with us can create great success.
It's very great, and so much to share. So we'll look forward to hearing more. Thank you, Hobie. Next panelist is Mark McLaughlin, and he brings to us a unique perspective of being very familiar with both the buy and the sell side of the M&A world. In 2009, Mark acquired Pacific Union, a fine San Francisco Bay Area company. It was then generating $2 billion of sales volume, but also running a multi-million-dollar negative EBITDA. 12 acquisitions later, Mark sold Pacific Union to Compass for a very large sum, I might add, because it's highly profitable, and then generating more than $14 billion in sales volume with 2,200 agents. Mark's currently president of McLaughlin Ventures, and he uses his amazing experience now advising firms in the M&A field. Welcome, Mark.
Well, thank you, George. Thank you, John. And it's always a pleasure to be with Hobie and Bass and Larry.
That's great. I appreciate it. And you were able to grow a company very quickly into one of the largest in the U.S. So first, was the growth intentional? And then how did you do it?
I hope it was intentional. Yes, of course. But I think what's most important for the audience is to understand the great benefits and advantages to a brokerage company at scale. And scale might be something over 2,000 units. It might be over 4,000 units. But when I was in early 2009, I was running a firm of 24 agents and maybe 300 trades a year. And it was difficult to run that business in a vibrant way. So when the opportunity to acquire Pacific Union came along, which was doing about 2,000 trades a year with about 400 agents, it gave me the permission, or it gave me the opportunity to run a business at scale, where you could add in mortgage, you could add in insurance, you can add in property management. And those related services are vital to the fiscal success of a brokerage business. So once we got the Bay Area to, let's say, 5,000 trades and about 750 agents and around 7 billion in sales volume, we decided, okay, our next logical market, a little bit like what Hobie just articulated, our next logical market was Southern California. And so we took the strategy that we have to go to scale immediately. And so the only way to do that, it would take way too long to grow businesses like this organically. To do it at scale and do it through M&A, we acquired 3 different firms in about 10 months that put together around 4,000 to 5,000 trades and about 5 billion in volume. And so again, you can roll in escrow, you can roll in title. Actually, title is very difficult in California. But the message is to those of you who are running a firm sort of under 100 agents or maybe under 200 agents, getting to scale is really important for the fiscal vibrancy of your organization.
Very, very well said. And probably what M&A means in every industry is economies of scale. And Mark, you hit it on the head. So appreciate that very much. So we're going to begin now with opening the questions up to the entire panel, so we can dig a little deeper in everything that they articulated here. So we're going to begin with a 2-part question. So the first is, panel, what are your thoughts on the state of the current M&A market, which is a tough one? And then the second part of that are, what are the challenges and opportunities that you see? Who'd like to start?
I can jump in there. Somebody's got to start, right?
Thank you, on my screen, you're on the top, so.
Well, you have to be the most active in the country, Hobie, so get after it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying not to be right now. It's like I promised family that we would take a few months, and we got a lot of integration to do. But what I would say is we are in a great deal of conversation. I think what I'm seeing in the marketplace itself, that the natural larger acquirers seem to be on pause. Just sort of see, especially for these first 2 quarters, trying to just sort of see how things shake out a little bit. But I mean, we're probably in conversation at one level or another with about 10 different firms right now. Some of them are what I referenced before, those real tuck-ins, where we can have immediate synergy in terms of cost, because we won't do a deal with office space right now. We're rolling agents into an office is the goal. Again, back to that scale where, you know, we're looking at that return of can we also leverage mortgage, title, insurance, and other products to make a return on that investment. We're seeing sort of on those deals, we're seeing more of a heavier earnout is what we're offering, and what we're seeing in the competitive marketplace, and maybe not as high as multiples as George had said in the beginning, but people have been coming off a couple good years. On a larger scale, we've got like 3 or 4 really significant deals that are being in discovery, and they could be wildly creative for the industry and maybe a different look. Because I think what will shake out, in my opinion, on the M&A side in the probably second half of this year and the first half of 24, is I think you might see some different strategic relationships take place. Some folks that need scale, even if they already have it, or find a different outlet to create greater profitability and margin. So, so we're active and we're looking, but we've been very honest with people that the valuations are not based on, 21 and 22. We're looking, I'd love to do a 12-month rolling average on my deals, but I think we're being fair with people and saying, we'll look at 12 months, we'll look at 5 years, and having a real discussion that's saying maybe 23 isn't the norm, but either is back half of 20, 21, and 22. So we've got to be, in terms of what that EBITDA calculation is, fair. But there does seem to be activity. And the other thing I will throw in outside the brokerage, and it sort of triggered what Mark said about scale. We've recently been having some calls from folks with mortgage, title, insurance operations that are looking for an exit, but they're interesting models because they don't really have a platform. And they're looking at those of us that have the scale to have models where we have the direct sale ancillary services, and saying, could they get better leverage by rolling in and creating scale there? So we've done a couple title deals lately, got a couple mortgage companies that we're in discussions with, and some small insurance. So I think there's some real opportunity, not just from the brokerage side, but from the whole family of services aspect.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, George, I agree. I mean, I think it depends on your company, and this is so custom to what matters to you. And I think there's always opportunities. We've looked at a few different things. There's some, people who are getting out of the business and they want to scale down and go into retirement. And so they're interested in, coming as a tuck-in, as Hobie had said. We've done a bunch of those in the past. We're always looking at stuff like that. But I do think in this environment, which is really, it's a tight environment, people are stressed, inflation rates, all those things that are going on, you feel it in the air. The environment is just tougher right now. But I do think there are huge opportunities in this environment as well, if you're willing, to be a little bit of a cowgirl and do some stuff and get out there and get and sort of, expand your company if you're interested in doing that. It just has to make sense for what your company represents. Like for us, we won't expand in every place, but there are geographic locations that make perfect sense for us where we will open. And so we're always looking into things like that. We've looked at Aspen before. We just opened in Rhinebeck not too long ago, which makes sense for us. We're in Hudson. It has to kind of make sense for your company. And I do think there's always opportunities. You just have to be out there and looking. And people are always talking to us. People wanted to acquire us too many times. And so not right now, though. I don't think now would be a good time, but we're in a good spot overall.
Best a follow-up, if I could, let me follow up and then move over to Larry. Taking from what Hobie had to say, and Hobie, wonderful information, and congratulations, obviously, on all of the continued growth, including one of the latest was Long Island with the Finns, and a phenomenal company and management team. And Bess, when you're talking about like opening up in Rhinebeck, I was just up in Rhinebeck, and when you look at some of the companies that you're talking to, I think all of you are talking to, but the size of the organization is important, but not that important. Tell us if you'd be, I think of you and your expansion as potentially being open to single office, 2 office firms, things of this nature that are strongly run, but perhaps that owner operator is closer to exiting than others. So tell us a little bit more about your discussions there.
Yeah, I mean, I get a little bit of agita and stress when I think about the size of Hobie's firm. Like I think about managing that, and I need a Xanax just thinking about it because it's so overwhelming.
So
I knew that you did, Hobie, because you seem way too cool, way too calm and way too cool.
Yeah, pharmaceuticals.
That's a different, what Hobie is doing, which is incredible, and he does it so well, is it's overwhelming. It's large. It's this big scale. We're a little bit different, even though we're bigger because we're 3,000 agents. We still operate like a mom and pop. I pride myself. I know so many of the agents, and I want to know what's going on everywhere. I want to be a part of that and make sure the culture is intact. And we're trying to run it in a very careful way. We're more about quality than quantity. So we're not going to grow at that scale. It's something we would never do. And it's just a different model. And Hobie's model is great. It works for him, and our model for us and where we are, it works for us. It's everybody's different. It depends on your culture, your vibe, and what you want in your company.
But can I just, before you jump to Larry, I would add I agree with everything Beth said. The one thing I would say though is that I think that you go back to George's opening comments about culture. Part of maybe the reason I'm not so stressed out is that what we learned a long time ago is that the culture piece is the ownership piece. So a little bit to John's, yeah, there's a lot of people, and we're looking at a couple deals where the owners really want to exit and they don't have an internal succession plan. And they might be a one office company. Maybe it's in a market that we need coverage, or maybe it's one that we can consolidate, and they have a trust level that those agents are going to come into the Howard Hannah culture or family of cultures and grow. But that, Bess, to your point, that leadership thing, we are very hands-on as a family. We're a real estate family. I mean, I'm an agent at my core. I as much like to be on a listing appointment and negotiating a deal as running the operation. But for us, like when you mentioned Long Island, to not do a deal with people I already didn't like and trust with the Finn family, and knowing that Whitney and LP are staying on board and Bob to run that operation for us day to day, so I don't have to helicopter in there. I don't have to build all the relationships because I know the culture's there. Or no different than the Tate group in the Carolinas, knowing that Pat Riley and Gary Scott and their leadership team is there, and I've known them and I trust them, and I might talk to them every day and say, is there any crisis? Is your hair on fire? Is there anything I can help you with? But I really trust in a capacity that acquisition group's doing their thing, and then as importantly, that our team internally, Dennis Sestra running Pittsburgh for us, or Alicia Kosick running our Cleveland marketplace, that leadership group, I have complete trust. And that allows us to build that rapport and relationship with the agents and know what's going on in their life as best you can, and how we can support them. And are we making the right business decisions for their growth, not just in one market or for one brand, but for everybody. So that having that right leadership is the key. If it's not there, we'll pass on the deal. We'll pass on the deal.
I love that, Hobie, but you're unique, and I think I love that you're doing that, because there are companies out there that are growing just to grow without looking at what's going on, and you're a different type of a leader, and I respect and I value that greatly.
But I think that's what everybody here does. I just want, because I think I agree with you. Some of the companies that are growing for growth's sake, well, you can see some of their returns, and they're growing for growth's sake, but without management, without leadership, and without local people doing a difference, just like Larry's doing with his company. And that's an important aspect of the culture, more than just, well, do you have a similar commission split, or, are you independent or franchised? To me, culture is leadership being the same, that it's not a square peg in a round hole.
Yep.
Very, very well said, both of you. Larry, your thoughts on the current M&A market and the challenges and opportunities, please.
Well, pretty much what Hobie and Bess are talking about. For us, we established the culture piece for 15 years. So what we did was try to create that image in the marketplace so that people would want to chat with us if they could. And we've had, some of our best deals have come from people coming to us and asking us if we would consider acquiring them, and they turned out to be some of the best deals. So we worked on the culture part, but we're smaller, so it's like smaller bites of the apple. We do strategic moves. We follow our leads, is what we call it. And what it means is, if we're having an impact in a particular marketplace without being there, we begin to look in that market to see if there's an opportunity that will match our company, our culture, our business model, and then we grow from there. So we have a smaller growth pattern, but we think we're pretty effective in it in terms of picking the right companies. And I guess the first and foremost thing is, you have to be attractive yourself in order for yourself to grow that marketplace. So that was one of the questions I know further on is, what do we do if we think about selling? It's, you've got to be someone that wants to be joined before I will talk to you about joining me.
Are you seeing opportunities now? You see the market is still vibrant?
There's an abundance of opportunities, but again, I'm in a smaller world, so I have smaller markets, but I'm having conversations every day. But we don't grow to grow. We don't grow just to be bigger. We grow to be strategic. So if there's a particular market that's of interest and we are interested in going there, we'll talk to someone. And there's a lot to talk to right now, because to Hobie's point, people are nervous. People are they're going through another market that's a challenge, and sometimes people just don't want to do that again. And therein lies the opportunity for acquirers. And the other opportunity is, the Wall Street companies aren't doing anything. So I've lost that major competitor out there that used to be kind of crazy, making offers and multiples that I couldn't touch. They're not there anymore. So I kind of have my own world to tap into, and it's been It's good. We've done 3 of them in the last several months.
Very, very, very.
Hey, George,
Thank
can
you.
I?
If I could, I want to add something and then come back to everyone. You made a comment, Larry, which is smaller bites of the apple. And I think for the hundreds of folks joining us today, there's probably a lot of people on the call today that don't have the resources to make big bites of the apple, but are interested in smaller bites of the apple to create and to emulate to some degree. Larry, you've got a firm that did $3.6 billion in sales. And you know, you've built that organization primarily with small bites of the apple. And I go back to the Hannah family prior to some of the incredible huge successes. They were small bites of the apple too, to create the scale that enabled them, and I don't put words in your mouth, Hobie, but to make those huge acquisitions, and also to hone their culture to attract organizations like the Finn Company, and which is a prime example of organizations that it's a perfect, great fit, and Alan Tate, etc. But I think at this point, let me go back, if you don't mind. Let's hear Mark's comments about the opportunity in today's markets, and then move forward.
And let me just preface, Mark has a good worldview because he gets to go all around the country working with companies and helping them in M&A advisory. So you've got a pretty good handle on the entire market.
So
Well,
forget
yeah.
confidentiality, Mark. Tell us who wants to be bought.
Yeah, okay, here we go. Take notes. I just have to emphasize the culture component that Larry and Bess and Hobie talked about. It's just ultra important. Nothing more needs to be said. One of the things that I am seeing is the usual suspects don't seem to be terribly active in M&A. And I have 3 deals going on right now across the country, and the buyers are not people that I would have guessed 12 months ago would be out buying brokerage companies. They're existing operations, so it's not like a hedge fund, it's not private equity, it's operators. And the concessions that a buyer is willing to make and do a 7-year earnout instead of a 3-year earnout to get proceeds to a seller, when the P&L probably since June, if not September, in most brokerage companies has been pretty compromised and is now just starting to come back. So I see those buyer-seller concessions happening to try and accommodate that stress in the P&L.
Very, very, very good. You know, I'm going to jump around a little from our questions because it leads me to, I think what people want to know, many on this call, is just how did you get started? How do you get started in M&A? I know a lot of times people are all calling you now asking if you'll buy them, but how do you get started if you've never done an M&A?
I could, I'll just jump in here. One of the benefits I had was I worked for Realogy Corporation for 11 years in their franchise sales organization. So I had a little bit of a taste of what a merger acquisition could do for a company. And when we bought our own company, I just took that and reapplied it. But one of the things I would suggest to the small bite of the apple people as well out there is, if you see a market that you think you'd like to be in, don't be afraid to go have lunch with someone and let them know that you think you have a like culture. You think that potentially you could do something together. I know you're not doing it today, and you're not thinking about it today, but I want you to know if you do think about it, I'm the person that you want to talk to, because I'd be very interested in talking to you. And we kind of followed that pattern with the markets, and we had people react and come back, and so it just kind of grew from there. And then once you've acquired a few companies, people now see you as the acquirer, and it gets easier to chat and talk to people.
Very well said.
George, I've got a great and funny story on that. When I acquired Pacific Union, I was a firm of 24 people. I had a bookkeeper on a beeper, and I had a conference room that might have been 8 feet by 8 feet. And the seller was GMAC Home Services or Brookfield at the time. So I had to somehow figure out how I had really big shoulders to pull this thing off. And so our first meeting was in a buddy of mine's conference room in the Transamerica building. He was an investment banker, and so I wouldn't let them come to our office into my 8x8 conference room and know that I don't have a staff or anything. But I would say that how do you get started? You got to be bold and you got to be confident, because that exuberance is contagious.
I thought I might add on considering the audience and that there's one is how do you get started? And I think Larry and Mark hit on that. I think for the other side of the audience that might be saying, well, what if I want to exit? And there's in our industry, I think where one of the challenges exists for folks who do want to create scale, who do want to merge together, who do want to take, maybe there's one acquirer and one person who's looking to sell, but I think in our industry, we always say this, we compete so much on a daily basis in market especially, that a lot of times I find that broker who maybe should sell or is thinking about it, they need some counsel. And whether it's hiring a firm like yours, George, or somebody else that represents them, unfortunately, we see at least fewer deals that just come to us with some form of representation where they've said to a seller, here's what your expectation should be, and here's what happens. And they're flying by the seat of their pants, and maybe it's maybe they're not getting the value they should, or maybe they're taken advantage of, or worse. I think the best play might be an in-market synergy. It might be somebody in Larry's market to call Larry or Bess's market to call Bess, but they don't want to because of that competitive nature. They figure, if I call Brown Harris Stevens and I call Bess and say, I'd like to sell my company, my one office company, it fits your footprint, she might laugh at them. Is there insecurity sometimes? And figure that now she's just going to recruit all my agents and put it out there. Well, I think having representation that creates confidentiality. We're talking about big businesses today. Even a one office company can be, a sizable purchase price. And so I do think ones make the call, but others, if you're on the side of selling, is not be afraid to have an attorney, an accountant, George's firm, somebody represent you and let them go make the calls, get the confidentiality, and you might be better off long term anyhow that way.
Very well said. And sometimes a third party can tell them things that you as a buyer don't want to, that the value of the company is X when they think it's 3X, and you have to explain to them it's not. And sometimes from a buyer's perspective, it's better to be the second person to tell them that rather than the first. So, well,
George, I also think that, like, at least in our process, which we do have a process, and this, George, but we actually advise, even if somebody's not, is in meeting number one, if they sign an NDA with us and we're saying, here's some financials, we want to know that they're passing that on to their accountant and their attorney, and they're getting them engaged up front. Because I would rather, quite honestly, in almost every deal we do, the target owner is going to play a role with us, whether it's agent, whether it's manager, whether it's vice president, doesn't matter what it is, they're going to, even if their earnout's there, so there has to be trust. So I would rather my CFO or controller be talking to their CFO, controller, outside accountant, somebody on the valuation, so that they can hash that out a little bit, and then each party can be represented and said, yeah, this is a fair add back, or this is what it is, before the offer gets presented, so it's expectation. Because the deals that I haven't done are usually where a seller says to me, yeah, I want to sell, give me the number you'd pay. And it doesn't matter how fair I am, they don't think it's the right number. And then they almost get mad, and they're like, well, how are we supposed to work together? You took advantage of me. And I've said for years, when somebody says, because we're privately held, a reporter will say, how much did you pay for this company? And my answer always is, I think we paid too much, they think we paid too little, so we'll be really good partners. But you got to have that counsel and advice from the get-go. It just makes things a lot easier.
And the third party actually takes the emotion out of the deal. I learned that early on. I use George, I'm not plugging him or anything, but I've learned to use George or a third party, because when he's telling them about their numbers, it takes the emotion out of it. They're not debating with me about their numbers. They're talking to George, and then we sit down and talk further from that point. So it just took that emotional heat out of that moment when we all have to talk about what their real value is.
Very good. Thank you. Bess, do you want to chime in?
Oh, I think it's just everybody made such good points. We've had it's so important if you can get another person involved, because we had a deal that we were working on, and let me tell you, egos got involved, and what Hobie said about value, they wanted a price that, and they were insulted, and it blew up. It got really unpleasant, let's just say. And so it's hard. I mean, it's relationships, and people put their heart and soul into it. And when you put the value at a place where they think it's too low, and it's very hard. So having a third party, I think, is such a good point, Larry. And I think it helps the process to get things done. And it takes the emotion out, which is hard to do, and it's important.
And Mark,
especially, if I could, especially as you've all talked about, you operate in an environment where you compete day in and day out, and you have a degree of trust, but there's also sometimes a lack of understanding or even information when they don't employ the services of George or Mark or to help them through this process. Because I've been in real estate since the late 70s, okay, and yet I get questions all the time. And one of the questions is very interesting that we'll ask here is, I have people ask me, broker owners, they like to know more about the benefits of an earnout as opposed to a payout, okay? It's not as if they're not bright people, guys and gals, but they've never had to deal with it themselves. It's always second and third hand information, but now they're contemplating their own baby being potentially merged or sold, and they don't fully understand. They don't want to sound as if they don't know, but what is the benefit? Tell us let's dissect that a little bit. When Larry, Hobie, Mark, Bess, you're talking to a broker who's a 2-office, 3-office firm, and they have an interest for whatever the reasons, okay? But how do you breach that? What's the benefit of an earnout to a person versus a payout?
and you're talking about a guarantee versus an earnout, is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
Mark?
well, I was just going to say that a lot of deals we do, there's still a cash guarantee. I haven't, maybe we're foolish in that sense, but I just think you're buying everything, John, you said about the baby. And so I look at our family business, and if somebody was going to try to buy our family business, I would be like, I got to take some chips off the table, no matter what that is, to then achieve the earnout. So we always look and say there's some cash that you're going to put in pocket and walk away. And then earnouts can be structured a lot of different ways. I think that comes down to a negotiation of what are you using as an EBITDA? Are you using a multiple year average, or using one? Earnouts can be structured that you have to. What would be the benefit is if you as a seller are saying, okay, maybe I'm selling my business in 2023. Maybe it's not the high of the market. I plan on being here in an active role, this one office company. Maybe I'm staying on as manager. I have direct control. Can I earn more than taking all cash today? Do I believe the market's going to improve and there's an upside for me to grow the business? And so you have to ask yourself what your future looks like. Sometimes we'll do earnouts that scale back a little bit. You can still get something if you're within 85% of the target, and maybe there's an upside that you can get a little bit more. We do most of our earnouts, and we give, because if we're basing on a multiple years, we also will give multi-years to catch up. So if you have one good year, one bad year, and then the third year, you can catch that up so you can still get your full amount if you think the cycle's going in the right direction. Years ago, we would also do what we started dubbing a confirm out. Some owners didn't want to see that upside. They weren't as concerned. Maybe they were a little leery. So we said, okay, if this is what we're basing the EBITDA, here's your earnout number, but it's got to be confirmed on that average EBITDA. You've got to hit that. Or if we tie it to company dollar or something else, because they're afraid of controls. So I guess in a nutshell is that if you believe that your company is being transferred to somebody who's going to help it grow and it's going to do better, and you believe the cycle of the market might be up, then you go with the earnout. If you don't take the earnout, you might just get the multiple, but it might be a lower multiple without any upside on the back end. So you're sort of betting on yourself or the future of the industry.
Very well said. Others?
My observation is that it comes back to the original conversation about culture. And with the buyer and the seller. So in any buyout situation, the buyer is going to have a greater influence on the business every day that goes by. And so it's really important to understand the DNA of the buyer. Are they there to make the business better and grow it? And if so, the seller can really improve performance through an earnout and improve proceeds. But if there are definitely buyers out there that have caveats in their purchase documents that if the following performance isn't hit, it's actually quite punitive. And so we always took the approach in our acquisitions that if I had to pay 120, and if we put a collar on the EBITDA performance, you know, a floor of 70% and a ceiling at 130. If I ended up paying 130% of what I thought I was going to pay, it means I got 130% of the business I thought I was buying. And I like ring the bell in victory with my partner. There are buyers who try and drive it the other way because they think they can save money. So you need to be cognizant of that.
Well said. You want everyone to achieve the full earnout and both sides win.
Yes.
Well done. Larry?
It's almost the same, you know, like I said, the smaller bite of the apple for the people that are in that realm. Our general deal is something up front, an earnout, and you know, and either a guarantee or a growth opportunity, and we talk through that through the entire thing. So it's the same. I think the same as everyone else. Just it's you know, from our perspective, it's more of we're protecting ourselves against a down market at the same time as allowing them the opportunity, if the market gets a little better, to be a little better in terms of what they may receive.
Yeah, very good. Yes.
Yeah, it's usually similar to what Larry said. We usually have done something up front and then an earnout. But I would say I like what Mark had to say. I do think it's like a victory for everybody when it achieves or overachieves, and you know, it's a success. It's something that you want. But I will just caveat this and say we merged with someone, we tucked somebody in that culturally was not a good fit. And I know, like Hobie, you said you're in charge and it starts at the top, but I'm just warning that sometimes when you know, get into business with people that are not a fit, it can be painful and it can create a lot of problems. So even though we're overseeing it and watching it and making sure, you want to try to be as careful as you can and make sure you have alignment on a lot of the things, because that stuff is very tricky. I'm not going to get into details about it, but it can get really down and dirty when it doesn't work out.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, Bess. I think one of the lessons we've learned over time, or I've learned, is that no matter what the deal structure is, we want a certain return on that, right? As the acquirer. So in the past, we maybe knew we wanted that return. Our internal management team would close on a deal, and we might start driving towards certain execution pieces where to make that return. Now, as part of usually even before we get to a letter of intent with somebody, we're having a lot of dialogue with leadership about what the expectations are. And if we say, hey, if we're going to buy your company at this number, we need to make a 20% return annually on what we're purchasing. Back to Mark's, I'll ring the bell with you if that's how the earnout's tied in. But if you don't share that's where it can get dirty if you don't hit the number. That's where somebody, the former owner, starts to say, well, I didn't hit my company dollar earnout because you reduced costs, or it's an EBITDA earnout, and I didn't understand that to get that we were going to have to do this integration. So I almost say we have to put that plan together and we use that as a roadmap for the first couple of years. Like, this is what we said we were going to do. We signed off on it. It's not necessarily part of the transaction, but it's more, and that ties to culture. And you never have to pull the document out if you know you're doing a deal with the right culture, but it's nice to have it so that you say, remember, we agreed this would be part of our process. And that makes a world.
No, Hobie, what you're saying, which is so important in business, is you're managing expectations up front. So everybody knows, so there's no finger pointing and people don't get angry and then start to ruminate. And I think that's a great strategy.
Yeah, and there's a conversation on the front end where, we're buying this company, but we're also going to invest in this company. So we didn't buy the company to keep it at the same level that it is. We intend to grow it, but we're going to invest in that. So we want to participate in that as well. It didn't grow magically over the last 3 years. We've invested a lot of time, money, and effort into it. So there's a benefit there for us.
Agree.
Larry, on that note, and I want to open this up to everyone too, as we're getting towards the end of the session. When does the process start? When does the courting process start? And typically, in each one of your expertise, how long is the courting process to acquire, no matter the small bite of the apple, a medium, and a big size bite at the apple? And also, second part of that question from our audience is, how does the confidentiality portion of this work? Okay, when is that integrated and how?
For me, it's immediately with the NDA. You know, we do that immediately. And there's a saying in sales, you know, time kills all deals. So for us, we move as quickly as we can, because the longer that thing goes on, the harder it is to make it happen.
But you might have started a deal many, many months ago or years ago. Is that right, Larry?
Oh yeah, with conversations, lunch,
Yeah.
whatever we've done, it's been over time. But when we're at the NDA, we want to move as quickly as we can.
Fair enough.
So when you say quickly as possible, give the audience
It's a couple of months. A couple of months to get from the start to the finish, if everything goes just right.
Okay.
And it never does.
Yeah, because if things drag on too long, you definitely, if things are just like not getting done, and it's true, then you lose momentum, and sometimes the deal just dies for whatever reason. People start to back out, but that seems like a few months should be enough time.
It should be. What I would say is again, it's managing expectations. If I have, you know, and we've done a lot of these deals, we're fortunate enough that he's a good friend of ours who does all of our legal work, which is a big part of it. And he'll joke sometimes and say, you know, it might cost more, but maybe we should offer to pay part of the legal fees to the other side if they use the right law firm. Not every lawyer knows how to do M&A transactions. Not every lawyer understands the amount of schedules. And you say, you know, I mean, we've all been through it, right? It's like, okay, the lawyers are going to verify everything they told us in the EBITDA. It's going to be confirmed. There's going to be schedule after schedule. It has to be prepared. And what I find is that too often a seller uses their friend who's an attorney at a firm who's really more of a not a transactional or M&A attorney and is getting counsel, doesn't understand the tax ramifications. So you go down a path and all of a sudden you've agreed to a purchase price in an ND and an LOI, and now their tax accountant's saying that wasn't the best position for them, and you're having to recraft that. So just like I said before about having the counsel and experts, I think it's really important. So you could close a deal in 30 to 60 days if the financing is in place. But I always find that it bogs down that the seller's expectation of how much work needs to get done and questions get answered really slows the process. So I'm seeing a lot of deals because of that, which should have closed in 60 days are closing in 90 to 120 and sometimes more.
George?
Yeah, I agree with everything that was said. If anyone else wants to jump in, but usually it's the engagement time. But once they're engaged, I think if you can't do it in 60 or 90 days, it may not happen. So I think you got to put 2 to 3 months and hard work in to try to get it done once everyone's in agreement and engaged. And that's about my time frame. 2 to 3 months is everything that I've worked on. Mark?
Yeah, I mean, once the LOI is signed, it really depends on who's drafting the docs and how balanced they are. If it comes out like one of those institutional landlord leases, you know, we've got a long slug on our hands. But if it comes out balanced, you can close in 45 days.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Well, you know what? Unfortunately, everyone, this hour has really flown by, and I want to thank all 5 of our esteemed panelists and moderators for participating. This has been absolutely wonderful. There's a lot of questions that we could not get to. However, we'll be able to get to many of these questions in September when we're all together in Washington, D.C. at the Mayflower Hotel. Again, the information is up on the screen. I will be sending information out to everyone that attended. I thank everyone for participating today. Bess, Mark, Larry, Hobie, and George. Continued success, because there are opportunities out there, significant opportunities out there to grow, whether it be a small bite of the apple or larger bites at the apple to grow your business, to grow your footprint, to grow your market share, and prepare your companies for a great 2024, which we're all shooting for. Let's close out 2023 strong, and let's shoot for a great 2024. Thank you all for participating. And George, good luck with the book. It's a tremendous book. I highly recommend that you, if you get a chance, to read George's book. It's tremendous. It's great information on M&A in real estate. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, guys. Have a good
Thank
one.
you.
John.
Thank you.
Everybody.